your screen or whatever.
Great. Yeah, hi, I'm Jim. I haven't met some of you because I haven't been at aggregate meetings in the last few months, but I have been an active member of PDX Lang for the last few years. And I'm actually, and I have talked about for several years doing a tutorial on Git, just because I bump into people who don't really understand it and get confused. And I kind of had some of those ideas in the little announcement of, if you do this, like if you often have to reclone the repository because you can't, things got messed up. Well, hopefully this will help you. We'll try to touch on those. I'm sharing my screen now. There is a document which I put into the shared Google Doc, and I can put it into the shared space if you want to follow along. I'm going to put it in the shared space here. Oh, but I'm sharing my screen, so I can't see it. Never mind.
Jim, I can paste it.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could paste that PDF one. Anyway, yeah. So we're looking at it.
Sorry, I need to fix it. Just a second.
We're looking at my GitHub repository. That's, I'm sure, too small to see. It says, my name is Jim Tyhurst, Jimtyhurst. Anyway, I have this project that I just created today, Git 10 commands, but I've been actually working on this project for quite a while. So I believe that these 10 commands, you can do a lot. You can contribute to a project if you know these 10 commands. I'm not going to talk about setting up Git because that is kind of a pain in and of itself. But I'm assuming many of you already have a GitHub account and you do something with Git. So I'm kind of talking to those people who are confused. And if you're an expert, I'm only going to talk for a short period of time, so hopefully you won't be bored. The first thing you do is when you set up, and there's a bunch of these 10 are kind of the next 10 you should learn after you've learned these 10, but these, some of them are trivial, like init, that's what you do to start your thing. Diff is what you do to look and see what differences are. Anyway, we'll come back to that later. So the first thing you do is, and another thing I'm talking about is, sorry, to scatter a little bit. People feel like they have to have commit privileges in a repository in order to contribute, but that's really not the case. And in most cases, somebody who's running an open source project won't want to give you permissions to commit stuff in their repository because they want to maintain control. They want to make sure people are following the right standards and stuff. Even if you work in sort of like a civic tech kind of thing or something, you don't necessarily need to. And the reason why is because you start with this project repository and then you fork it. And that's something you do on the, which I'm not going to demonstrate tonight, but if you were here, you could click on the fork that assumes you have a GitHub account. And then that's what it does is it creates this copy, which is related back to the original. So it creates this copy. This is now my cloud repository. And from there, then I clone to bring it down to my workspace. You'll see lots of diagrams like this triangle. It's really important to understand this triangle. And most people have this divider of some of the stuff happens at GitHub, like the fork command you make on GitHub. Actually, this is a mistake. Maybe we'll go back and fix this. The clone command actually happens on your local space. And when you do that, now you have this thing, this reference from your workspace back to the cloud repository, which is called, by default, is the origin. And what you do is you add a link back to this other one. By convention, it's called upstream. So you'll see diagrams like this all the time. I think that this y-axis divider between their stuff and your stuff, I think that came out of Jenny Bryan, because I don't remember seeing it in other charts before her tutorial. And that's really key is to remember what's your stuff, what's happening on GitHub, what's happening local, what's other people's stuff. I'm going to do stuff on the command line, which I know is annoying for many of you, and you were hoping I was going to open up RStudio and show you how to use their visual tools. I really believe that it's helpful to understand the concepts on the command line. But even if you don't use the command line, hopefully you can look at the diagrams and you can say, oh, I'm supposed to do a push now. And you'll go find the icon in RStudio, which is the push. Another reason why I don't use those is because I use some different tools. Like I don't just use RStudio, I use Visual Studio Code, and I use WebStorm and different tools. And they all have their own little tweak on what that visualness should look like. And so I just do stuff on the command line. So here I am in a certain place called, and I'm going to clone that repository. And the way I do it is I go up here and I look and it says code and it gives me a link. I'm going to click on that link. And because I've already got one called this, because this is actually my repository that we're looking at, I'm going to call it something else locally so I can keep them different. So it brought all the stuff down to me locally. And now I have, and remember I said, it has this origin. Got a CD in there. I'm in the wrong space. That's why it gave me that error. So this shows that my origin is this place. All right. So now we're set up. And unfortunately, I'm not actually demonstrating this, having this separate one. You would add this upstream command, which I give right here, git add upstream, whatever the distance is, the URL is for that. So typically what happens is, I did this clone and then I go away, and a couple of days later, people have made changes to this project repository. And so you'll want to pull, that's the git command, git pull. And then in this case, I'll always be pulling from the upstream. And then this is the name of the main branch, and there's different name, different projects. A lot of the older projects have master, but everybody's changed to main recently. But in some places it'll be called trunk. Some places it might be prod for production, whatever that is. That's the main thing that you work off of. If you're working in this triangle, you're not going to make changes to main. You're just going to always pull changes from here, and you'll push them up to your local cloud repository just to keep these two synchronized. Just because this one is a fork, I'm assuming you can see my cursor as I'm moving it around. Just because your cloud repository was a fork of the project repository, GitHub doesn't keep it synchronized. You do that. You choose when you want to update. And so you do that with this push. All right, let's get to the more interesting stuff. So now you're ready to do some work, and you're going to do it on a branch. The reason why is you want your main to always be clean, clear. It's going to be, your main is synchronized with what the main branch is on the project repository. So actually, I noticed that this is sort of meta, but there's actually an error in this document, which we're going to get to in a little bit. So I'm going to create a branch, and it's just called branch. So this is the command. I'm going to create branch. I'm going to create some kind of a branch. I'm going to switch to that branch, and then I'm going to do my work, and then I'll see some changes that I made. So I'm going to say git branch fix, select, fix switch. So now I have a branch. I'm on main. It shows me I'm on main, but I have a new one called fix/switch. So I want to go there. I want to work on that branch. Now I'm there. Now I can do my stuff. I'm going to go ahead and make a change. Time's going faster than I thought it would. Oh, that's not the one I want. I'm not going to make that change. What's in 6? Sorry, I'm going to make this change. It says select. I'm going to make it be checkout. I can do a status, and it shows that I've made this change. I'm just going to leave it there for now. We'll see why later. So what we did is we did range. I made some changes. That's all there is. So when you're ready and you want to commit some changes, you're going to add these changes and commit them and then push. So we're going to follow this cycle. We're going to push to our local repository. Then on the website, we're going to create a pull request, and people might suggest changes, and then we would have to keep going around and around. So let's just do that. I'm in a different place here. I'm in a different repository. By the way, you might wonder, but why do you type so much? There's actually you can do all kinds of abbreviations and stuff. So you can create your own abbreviations. So I use BR for branch. I'll type it out now just so it's not confusing. But you don't really, I never type this much when I'm doing it. The other thing is there's also some auto completion. So I'm going to get branch. Give it some name for the branch. I'm going to switch to the branch. This was an error. It said select. It really should have said switch. Check my status, and I see it's changed. Let's go back here. I want to add this file. I want to commit it. I want to push it. So adding means you put it into the change set that's going to be committed. So I get, and you can either put the whole file name there if you want. If you just put dot, it means everything from here on down. Now I look at it again and see it's ready to, these are the changes that could be committed. Sometimes you would commit certain changes, but leave others not committed. You might want to do that. That's why this is about. So now I do a commit and it prompts you for a message. So I'll say this is a fix. Oops. Okay, now all my stuff is committed. I'm going to push. It might for origin. I need that. And it gives you the information here to create a pull request. So I go to my space. Actually, it also shows me here that I'm ready to make a pull request because I pushed this branch. There's actually a new branch here called select to switch, which was the name of my branch that I made. So I'm ready to do this work, create pull request. Sorry. I'm going to and you can add some documentation here. Anyway, I'm going to create the pull request. At this point, other people will look at this and they'll see that there's pull requests there, and they'll make comments because we'll be working on a team, we'll review, and somebody will say, what's this switch command? Why are you doing that? I mean, whatever. And they'll make comments. And so then I would go back and make more changes, and I would just keep pushing this same branch. I would make some changes again, and then I would say git push origin. Okay. That's what shows, that's what's happening here in this cycle. Okay. At some point, like I have control of this repository, so I can actually approve the pull request that I made. But normally, if you're submitting to some open source project, you make a fix to there and you submit that, then they are the ones who are the only ones who can approve the pull request. And what it does is, just to know, this a pull request, you can actually specify which you can merge. It doesn't have to merge into main. It could merge into other projects. This one is going to merge to main from the select to switch. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and merge my pull request. I'll confirm it. I'll just point out that normally you would go ahead and delete this. There's really no sense in keeping this branch around once you've accepted the thing. So I'm going to delete that. Now I've done this number one. Now back in my own space, I'm still off on this branch, but it's like it's gone. It's already been fixed. So what I want to do is switch back to main. But now there's a main that was changed on the project repository that's not in my local space, right? Because main is different from, let me just show you this. It's probably not helpful yet. So what I need to do is I need to pull either from upstream or origin. In this case, it's origin because I don't have an upstream. I'm going to pull that. And this just brought the change down that I just pushed. It's less interesting because I'm just doing this all by myself. If you're on a team, of course, multiple people would be doing it, which brings you to the problem. And I have just about, I'll just take a couple more minutes. While I was doing this, somebody else snuck in behind me and made a change to this file. This is what happens for a merge conflict is, number one, I pulled from main. I was happy doing all my work. Meanwhile, somebody, my evil twin, did the same thing, pulled it down the main, made a bunch of changes, pushed it up here, created a pull request, did the merge of the pull request. And now a day later, I'm ready to do my changes. I do them, I push, and I come. And there's a conflict here because it recognizes only, not always, but if we're working in the same space, in the same part of the file, doing something similar, it's going to point out. So if you'll remember, let's see if we can make this happen. In this one, I actually made a change to that same file. So I'm going to go ahead and add this. I'm going to commit it. I made change to what's called select. I'm going to go ahead and push mine. This is called fix switch. Oops. I need to push someplace, push into origin. Let's go see what this looks like. Oh, I don't have a pull request yet. So I'm getting ready. I'm doing the same process again. I'm making a pull request. Ooh, I get a red mark. It says can't automatically merge. Why? Because I actually changed on that same line. Two of them. One of them changed the wrong word select to switch, which is the correct one. This one changed the wrong word select to checkout, which is kind of an older version of what switch was. So I can go ahead and make this pull request, but I won't be able to merge it because there's a conflict. And so then what you have to do, I'm not going to do it right now because it's kind of time consuming. This just sets up, we do have a merge conflict because my evil twin, Tim, got in there before me. And now I'm coming and trying to make a similar change. It's different, but anyway, it conflicts. So the system itself can't do the merge. So it's pushing it back on me and saying, you got to do the merge. So how do you do that? Basically, this is a continue on. We were at step 7. In number 8, I would switch back to main. I'd pull from this upstream main. So now I would get that change, which is causing the conflict. And I would switch to my branch. And then this is the key, this merge. And here's the code up here that goes through the sequence. I merge, when it says merge main, it's merging main into your branch, which in my case was called fix switch. And it gives you some messages in the file. You'll see these little dash, and it's going to take a while to do that. I'm not going to do it tonight. And you go just fix it and you figure out which one is the correct one. And then you've made some changes. So of course you have to add that to the change set. You have to commit it. And this is the same branch that I had before. I just push it up again. But now the merge conflict is resolved. So my pull request can go forward. In the case where you do have privileges, then you don't have to have these 2 repositories. You don't have to make a fork. You can push. You still should work on branches. Don't do main, but you push that up, and then you can create your pull request here. You can probably approve your own pull request. It depends on what your organization's policy is. A lot of times, like in industry, in a software team, like maybe 2 people have to review it before you're allowed to commit it, whatever kind of rules you have. And then eventually, once it's done, you pull it down. I have a bunch of references here, which, where to go next and where to look at stuff. Let me just take 2 more minutes. The other thing, oh yeah. So why do you get messed up? Why does your repository get messed up that you're just hosed and you end up pulling down again? Probably because you were pushing to main, and then you're having to try to merge main from main. If you work on the branch, you push the branch, make a pull request, merge the branch, pull main down again. I've never had a problem. I've never had to redo my repository if you follow that triangular loop one way. If, on the other hand, let's say you're just working on your own, you're just really using GitHub, like, so other people can look at stuff, and it's really just your kind of like a backup, then yeah, I guess you can do all your work on main, and you just push main from time to time so that it gets backed up, and that's okay. But then all of a sudden your friend wants to make a pull request, and you're working on main, and then you accept the pull request, and now you've changed main and you're trying to pull main. There's really no reason why you can't. You can pull those changes into main and do it, but you can get messed up that way. really follow the triangle and that'll work. I was going to show you a stash, what happens when you, but I'll just point instead to a good document. This one, it's a website, 17 ways to undo mistakes with Git. It gives different scenarios, different things. You issued the command in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you're trying to fix it. This one's really good for that kind of stuff. Questions? I'm done. I'll stop sharing.
Thanks, Jim. Anyone have any questions for Jim?
If you have any suggestions for improving the document, it's a GitHub repository, and you could fork it and make a change and pass me a pull request. And maybe I'll approve it, or maybe I'll make suggestions that you should change or whatever.
Yeah, I was gonna ask like 2 questions if nobody else was. How have you used Git rebase ever for stuff?
Yes, and that's when you haven't pushed yet to the repository. It's just everything's local. But like, let's say I'm working on a 3-day project, and I work on day 1. And when I come in on morning of day 2, other people have made changes, and they've already got their pull request done. So I will pull main, and then I'm on a branch, and I'll rebase that branch on top of those changes. And it's just, instead of merging, I could have merged main into it, but instead I'll rebase. And then it keeps my set of changes, because I might make 5 commits in a day. I do a little increment of work, I commit it, do a little increment of work, commit it, but rebase puts it on top. That's a command in the second 10 that you should learn.
Yeah, and my question was, rebasing is usually something like the GitHub's like, don't do that, because it completely changes the order of the history of Git and all this stuff, right? So from a code management standpoint, in terms of forks, branches, and rebasing, how do you make yourself an agile organization? That's my question. Like, should you have at least one development branch or one development branch per user? Or do you have like a test and a development? Like, how do you set that up?
Branching is a whole different topic, and I'd be happy to talk to you offline. Different organizations differ in the way it's done, although there's really only a few conventions that most people follow. And so I would say there is one, either main, or like often main is the one that goes to production, and then you'll branch off at some point and say, this is going to be version 1. This is like a release candidate, version 1 release candidate. So you're working on that, but then within that branch, I'm making my own little branch of like, add the, this plot, or add this. And so then, but I still would, multiple people of us who are working on version 1 release candidate would be making changes to that branch, version 1 release candidate.
Yeah, I'll definitely
there's different opinions. I would say most people don't worry so much about rebase. There's other things like squash.
Okay, squash.
Which I never use, but that's one that people argue about is changing history.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you later on offline, because my boss wanted me to ask about what are the different coding conventions, because right now part of our organization is transitioning from a code management standpoint using GitHub to an old one where we literally have, I can tell you, documents like this high of code changes and the code printed out on paper. Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, feel free to contact me. I put my email in the chat.
So Ian is asking a question. Do you have any comments about RStudio's Git functionality?
Well, I really haven't used it very much, so I can't say. This was the big debate when I was working on a project with John and Sophie of whether or not to use command line or what to use. But it seems like it works well to me, the little bit I have used it.
Yeah, in my experience, I create merge conflicts all the time, and I'm never sure why.
Okay.
And I just get this feeling that I should, seek to graduate to just using the command line all the time. But
It's probably the issue of branching more than whether it's on the command line or whether it's in RStudio. I suspect there's too many commits coming into one place rather than that circle of create a branch, merge the branch, bring the main down, make a new branch, push the branch, make a pull request, pull the main down, make a new branch. I suspect.
Also, also, I think one thing I've noticed to follow up to what he just said, appending commits does not follow what he just said. So if you append a commit too many times, it'll cause you to have issues. Well, specifically if you use the append that's in RStudio, okay? Because you want to make sure when you append you commit that you don't append something you just pushed up. Because RStudio doesn't have a check for that.
So one of the irritations with RStudio, in my experience, is that when you knit a book, say, it updates all these files. And on Twitter this week, there was a beautiful solution, which is that you go to the stage, the Git pane, Control A selects everything, you press space, and it ticks all of the files in the list. And then you can commit and push, and you're home free. So to me, especially when we were working on this book, and there were literally, when you knit the book, there's 100 different pages, and clicking 100 different tick boxes is not my idea of fun. So I was just overjoyed to see that Control A and space does it.
have you tried it?
No,
John?
not yet.
Okay.
But it was from a very, a developer that's very reliable. I'm pretty sure that it works.
Yeah, I think it was Danielle who posted that, and I would trust Danielle. Well, thank
Thanks
you
for
so
letting me
much.
participate and present tonight. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you so much.
I have a question real quick.
Sure.
Jim, could you briefly explain the error message head detached?
You can get that if you check out an old commit. So the head usually points to the node, to the last commit, to the commit, which will be the parent of the next commit that you make. And what happens is if you check out something prior to the last commit, then you'll get that message of the head is detached, because you can't, when you make a commit at that point, if you were to make changes that want to make without doing a branch, it basically creates a node which will just get garbage collected and go away. So what it means is you're on the wrong commit. You shouldn't be making changes. If it says head is detached, you shouldn't be making changes there. So that means you should go somewhere else. You should follow that 17 ways to undo. Maybe you need to get rid of the intermediary commits so that you can start from that point where you think you ought to be. But that's what the detached head means. It's not ready for you to commit files at that point. By the way, we talked about there was just a little brief discussion of how the person who teaches always learns more than the learners. I actually, as I was presenting this, I found out that there's these commit conventions, which gives you advice on how to make the messages so you can actually automatically generate release documents from your commit messages. So that was cool. I didn't realize such a thing exists. And I actually haven't tried to generate the documentation yet, but I have started adopting their conventions for what the commit messages should look like.
Is that in your links?
Yeah, there's a reference. I think it's called best practices 10.4 good practices. There's a reference there to the conventional commits.
Okay, perfect.
Also on Twitter today, there was a link to a package that might be called GitR or something that will produce a very nice data frame that lists all of your commits. So to me, that seems like a very handy thing to have. Like a few months ago, I was trying to list what was the latest commit for 100 different files so that I could essentially get a handle on, you know, what files are updated and how old is the code in different settings. I couldn't do it then, but I think that this package would make it very easy. And I saved it and I can't find it. So there you go. I'm going to turn recording off unless somebody else has another Git question.
Can I make a quick announcement, John?